Hey, good morning, mañana nomás, people. I'm coming back at you live again without a schedule. And in case you're new here, my name is Kurt Von Annen. I own an agency called Mañana No Mas. I consider myself a business consultant first, but our output, our product, generally tends to be in the form of a website, whether that be for membership or for e-learning or e-commerce. And so I'm coming out today and I'm saying, not to talk about the details of WordPress. I'm not here to talk about, Matt, the benevolent dictator, or WP Engine, or anyone else for that matter. That's not why I'm here. What I'm here for is, and I started talking about this last night, I am in a lot of circles where a lot of people are talking about dealing with anxiety and dealing with fear and all of these things. And I don't know if it's because I've dredged the waters of being down for so long, that when things are up, I'm actually really happy things are up, right? And so I just want to encourage people. Human beings are incredibly adaptable. I look at, in fact, let me adapt this and bring the microphone down. I look at things like the show Hoarders. I bring it up all the time when I'm doing like person-to-person training. Look at the show Hoarders. People buy a beautiful home. They move into that beautiful home, and then they fill it with junk and debris and feces, and in some cases, die in a pile of their own excrement. And I would say, was that the goal? Did they notice that happening? How did they adjust? How did they adapt to that living situation? And some of us would look at it and go, how in the world would you adapt to that? There are people all over the world that don't have what we have here. Like, I'm in America, and I think to myself, people say, oh, well, I wish I had a new car. I wish I had a bigger house. I wish I had more property. I wish I had, as someone that lived in rentals for a couple of decades and couldn't get into a house, I'm very blessed right now. We just moved into this one. Not a rental, like we actually just bought a house. This is my point. We as people can adapt. We can go through the low points. We can get over the high points. We can go through the low points. We can get over the high points. And true, we should really enjoy the blessings. We should enjoy the high points that we are given. But we need to recognize that there are so many people out there that endure the low points and they adapt and they get through. And surprisingly, a lot of the people that you talk to that you assume are in the low points of life, in some cases tend to be some of the happiest, most content people that you're ever going to run into. And so I just want to be that kind of that voice of reason, that voice of hope or light in the darkness that says, hey, if you're feeling anxiety, if you are in this WordPress game and you're looking at what's going on and you're seeing doom and gloom everywhere, let's try to keep things in a big picture perspective. Okay. WordPress is more than 40% of the internet. And so that's a lot. It's open source. So there are copies of this software all around. And there are hundreds of hosting sources that we can put that software on. So push come to shove, we've always got something that we can build and develop upon, regardless of what happens with a couple of monolith players at the top of the food chain. When I see these guys back and forth bantering about this or that, and people at our level freaking out about it, I have to remind myself, and I get caught up in it too. So I'm not chastising anybody, but I got caught up in it for a little bit, and then I was like, wait a minute, it doesn't really matter, does it? Doesn't really matter, because if you're a WordPress professional and you are dealing with clients and end users, ask them if they know what's going on. Ask them if they've been getting the emails. Ask them, what their thoughts are and how you as a professional can help them. And here's what I've learned. I have clients that use the host in question. I have clients that use plugins in question. I have these situations in my client base. It's not how my business was grown. So I'm not heavily dependent upon one host or one tool, but I have clients that do use those hosts and tools. And so I asked them, I said, hey, you're probably getting some emails. How do you feel about, what's going on? And their response, I'm not going to say shocked me. I almost kind of expected it, but I was surprised at how immediate and light the response was. It was, my website's up and it works, so I guess everything's fine. You see, I think back to when I started Mañana No Mas. When I started Mañana No Mas, I didn't realize that there were thousands of developers out there. I didn't realize there were thousands of implementers. I didn't realize, there were all these people like me that were building websites for others using WordPress as the base and adding the tools required to build what you needed for a customer's website. I didn't realize there was a whole community of people that backed each other up, that helped each other, that created that community feel and really bolstered each other, right? I wasn't even aware that existed. It was my work with Lifter LMS that brought me to the community. And once I found the community, I kind of regretted that I hadn't found it 10 years earlier. And so I look at what's been happening now, and I look at the anxiety, and I'm in a couple of Slack groups, and I see some things going back and forth. And I think to myself, I don't think about it long. I think about it very shortly. I think, oh man, I should go back in time. Like, remember when I was ignorant. Remember ignorance is bliss. Remember being ignorant, not even knowing about the community or knowing that there was a person named Matt Mullenweg, not knowing how WordPress was even developed, just knowing that I could sign online and grab a copy of it and make a website. Like, that's literally how I got started in this thing and ran my business for a decade before I recognized that there was this whole infrastructure that led things. And so when I think about the thousands upon thousands upon thousands of people that must use WordPress that have no clue what's going on, to them, this thing just keeps working, right? They're human, they're adaptable. If something stops working, they'll jump in and they'll figure out an alternative that does work. And that's just how it is. People that are closer, right? I almost think of WordPress as a church. And I know that some people would get really insulted by that, but that's almost how I think about it. There's tons of people that go to church and they don't do anything but go to church. They just go to church on Sunday. They hear the message. They go home. They get recharged for the week. They go home. By Monday, by Tuesday, it's life as normal. They go back to church on Sunday. They get recharged. They go. And then there's those that go to church, read a little scripture. Go to church, do a little self-study. Go to church, listen to a podcast in the middle of the week, right? There's those folks. And then there's folks that go to church, are members of the church, volunteer at the church, go to meetings at the church, vote on important issues at the church, have a higher percentage of giving at the church. And those are the people that become passionate, that become ambassadors for the church. But then all it takes is just a little seed of dissent from somebody in that group, whether it be the pastor or someone on the board or the elders or something, a little seed of dissent. And then this little piece of negativity grows and festers and becomes this thing that sometimes can break a whole church down. But what you'll find is people that are closest to the pastor, closest to the organization of a church, can become the most critical, and they can become the most negative if we allow them. And so I want to think about that analogy with WordPress. And when I think about that analogy with WordPress, it had hit me, especially with my role with Lifter LMS and WP Tonic and the Membership Machine show and the show that I run at Mañana No Mas, when I started thinking about all the lives and all the FaceTime that I get with you online. And if you're new here, put in a comment. Let me know where you're from. Join along if you want. But here's what has burdened me this week, and that is I work really hard to be positive. I work really hard to be a light. I work really hard to try to enlighten people and add value to people and teach people as we go. For instance, Mañana No Mas, every time we do a project, part of what's baked into the back of that project is making tutorials for the customers so they understand how to use the product we just built. Now, whether they want to make the updates themselves or they want to hire us in the future to make the updates, I still make the tutorials because I want the customer to be enlightened. I want them to understand how the product works. So that's something that's baked into every proposal that Mañana No Mas puts out. It's our way of paying it forward and adding value. And as I think about the work I do with Lifter, with the Ask Me Anything calls and the office hours that we host, when I think about the support tickets I answer, when I think about the advice we give on the Membership Machine Show with Jonathan Denwood, I come back to it's all trying to be positive. It's all trying to bolster, to add value, to help people find success. And so when I have a conversation about WordPress in a time when a lot of people are anxious or feeling anxiety about what might happen. What happens if this lawsuit this, and if that lawsuit that, and if these people quit, and if these people go away, and if contributors stop contributing, and all these things, we can get wrapped up in a tizzy of that. And I want to go back to the positive side. The positive side is this. A lot of the people at the closest, a lot of the people at the most center of the organization, they have the highest probability of becoming negative. They have the highest probability of putting themselves in a position where they can create damage to the overall community. So if some of that gets filtered out, that's okay. That is completely okay. If development starts to slow down a titch, think about where WordPress is. It's already more than 40% of the internet. You can already take WordPress and do e-commerce, blogging, community, membership, e-learning. There's all these things, appointment setting. We can do all of these things in WordPress already. We have the freedom of design that comes with Bricks, that comes with Elementor. Let's just be real. If nothing developed any further than what we already have as far as open source software and things that we can get our hands on or subscribe to from paid plugins, if we had nothing else but what we already have, we still make awesome products for our clients and our end users. And so I want to encourage people, try not to get wrapped up in the negativity of it. Try to find the silver lining in that cloud. I almost sound like those messages I made during the pandemic when I said, hey, we have to find our opportunities within the obstacles. So as I look for the opportunities within this obstacle, this is one thing I feel really driven for. And it's not just because of the WordPress audience. It's because of the different circles that I interact in. I work with the college age group at our church. I have kids that are in that age group. I have a 17-year-old and a 20-year-old. I interact with some of their friends, some of their networks. And I'm seeing people get wrapped up in a sense of anxiety that's not healthy. I mean, the politics that we're doing right now, what we're talking about with Trump and Kamala, that's not healthy. The stuff that we're talking about with immigration, that's not healthy. The stuff we're talking about, well, we could just go on and on. I'm not going to go through all of this about inflation and economy and all these things. It's not healthy. Here's my main message. My main message is, as human beings, we have the incredible gift, the incredible ability to adapt. We have an incredible ability to find a way where it always works out. Now, I'm a person of faith, and I believe that God's got my back. And I try to remember that there's people all over the world that have dirt floors. There's people all over the world that live in thatch huts. There's people all over the world that live on a couple dollars a day. So I can't say that my faith is what brought me to the United States and lets me live in this house with a roof and heat and air conditioning. That's not what I'm getting at. What I'm getting at is what we need, we always manage to find or get or be given. So let's not worry about, and I'm going to say it, let's not worry about little things. Little things are how some dude at the top of the food chain feels on a Tuesday. Little things are in a sea of hundreds of hosts for the internet, one of them might go away. Okay, there's still hundreds to choose from. You might lose some work that you've put out. But if you've done your backups and you have files and you keep things on an external hard drive, you can always recycle that digital information and get it up somewhere else. You see, that's what I'm saying. As human beings, we're incredibly adaptable. We're smart. We can adjust. And so I just want to encourage you. Will you have to adjust? Will you have to make some changes? It's inevitable. I mean, climate changes. Everyone's arguing about the level of climate change and all of those things, but climate changes and we adjust with it. So I just want to encourage you. And if you're feeling like the anxiety is too much, or the anxiety is something that you want help with, or the anxiety is something you could read up on, or the anxiety is something that you want to talk to somebody about, I want to encourage you. If you feel like that's the case, find somebody to talk to. If you want to read something, go to manananomas.com, and we are starting a short series on anxiety for these reasons. On one hand, Mañana No Mas is a business consultancy. On one hand, we make websites. On one hand, these are the things that we do. But when I think about the core of what Mañana No Mas does, we work directly with business owners and we help them make decisions, and we help kind of look at their business and find out how to communicate their business using the internet in an efficient, profitable way. I'm trying to think of the right words to put here. So in some cases, that means reducing the level of anxiety and working with people so that they can be their best. So if you're feeling burdened by some of the stuff that's going on, and you want to do some read, you want to slow things down, you want to be nice to yourself, you want to give yourself some grace, take a moment. You can look at the latest blog on Mañana No Mas. We just put out a piece on anxiety. I just put out an ebook yesterday about anxiety. I sent that to my daughter so she could review it. We'll probably link it to Mañana No Mas later this week. And, I keep trying to find ways to pay it forward. I keep trying to find ways of saying, God's given me some talent. He's given me a gift of discernment. How do I share that with people without coming across like some arrogant jerk? I'm just a dude. I'm just some guy that lives in Kansas. Not a millionaire, far from it. All of our cars are high mileage, but paid for. We were swimming in debt when we escaped from California, and we managed to pay off that debt and buy a house in less than a year living in Kansas. You see, that's what I mean about making changes and being adaptable. I saw that things weren't going the right way for us when we lived in California. And maybe some people find a way to make it work. But for us, it wasn't working. So after years of being there, we escaped. We got out of there. We got to Kansas. We lowered our expenses by 65% for a year. We buckled down. We paid off our debts, and we were able to save a little bit of money for a down payment and get into this house. Is it a castle? It's not a castle. It's a modest ranch house on a little bit of green grass, but it got us where we need to be. And that's kind of my point. We are adaptable. We can find ways to find success. We have the ability to use logic and critical thinking when we slow ourselves down and get away from this anxiety thing. We have a way to go, okay, well, this is where I'm at, and that's where I want to go. So if I do this in these steps, I got a higher probability of getting where I want to go. We need patience. It takes time, but we can get there. And when we see obstacles come up, like some of the issues we're seeing in our politics, in our schools, in our economy, and for folks in the WordPress circles, in our WordPress circle right now, we can get really down. Don't let it consume you. That's all I can say. Don't let it consume you. Try to put off as much as you can. I will admit, I've probably put more thought into this WordPress stuff than I probably should have. But my role at Lifter LMS and WP Tonic, and with Mañana No Mas, obviously, had me kind of in that spotlight for a little bit. And so I got to know some of the details and some of the people in those details. And now that it's drug on for a few weeks, it's like, you know what? No matter what happens, it's going to be okay anyway. I've spoken to customers. They don't really care. I've spoken to end users. They certainly don't care. They go to the website and it works. And as I said earlier, We've all got copies of this open source software that's completely legal for us to continue to build and develop upon. So we're all going to be okay. We might have to adjust and figure out other methodologies, but we're all going to be okay. And for anybody that wants to connect with me about this, if you're on post status and we haven't connected already, but you'd like to connect, go ahead and jump in. Send me a message, jump in, jump on my podcast. The Mañana No Mas podcast is looking for guests. I'm more than willing to spotlight people in the WordPress field. Whether you got an agency you're growing or you got a plugin you're trying to promote, I'd love to help you out with that. And if we just stay positive as a community, we're going to be able to overcome whatever the monoliths at the top of the food chain decide or do. So with that, I'm going to end. Again, check out Mañana No Mas. If the anxiety thing is getting to be an issue for you and you're thinking, well, what if the worst of WordPress comes true? Oh my God, what am I going to do? Oh my God. Oh my God. Try to relax, cut yourself some slack, slow things down for yourself, go for a bike ride, go for a hike, get your thoughts straight and figure out what your next steps would be. All right. Have yourself a wonderful day. And I'm going to close this one out and I will see you very, very soon.